Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Dantona, CEO for the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce, and your host today. This is the Working Lunch program that we started during our COVID stay-at-home period that connected you with our business community. With all the changes that 2022 has brought us, this is just one more change we can add on. The Chamber is bringing a more direct partnership with KCBX to bring you a new form of the Working Lunch. Each month, we will sit down and talk with a member of our business community to talk about doing business on the Central Coast. We hope you'll join us for these conversations every month on KCBX issues and ideas. Today, I'm so pleased to be sitting down with Kerry Morris. Hi, Kerry. Thanks for being here today.
Hello.
Kerry's the Chief Operating Officer for Morris & Garritano Insurance Agency, one of the largest independent insurance agencies in the state of California. Morris & Garritano traces its roots back over 135 years ago here in San Luis Obispo and currently continues to serve our greater region. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Morris & Garritano's been in the community for 135 years now. So did you know from very early on, since Grandpa was in the business, Dad was in the business, that this was going to be your line of work?
So, no. I'd say one of the nice things about my dad is that he wasn't always recruiting us. And when I moved back to San Luis about 20 years ago and started working for the company, it was really because I wanted to work in San Luis. But I will say that it was a very pleasant surprise for him.
So when you were growing up, was insurance even part of the family conversation every day, or when you went to college, when you went out, did you even think about this being in the part of your life in the future?
I would say so not insurance, but one of the things that struck me growing up was just how engaged my dad was in the community. So I was always proud of that. And so it felt, I knew that he ran a business, owned a business, he was very engaged in it, but I wouldn't say that I really understood and knew what insurance was all about. I would say now that my brother and I are in the business together, there are a lot more conversations about insurance at home.
Well, and that's the funny part, right? You said your dad didn't make that a part of the everyday life of bringing it home and making sure his kids were going to be in the insurance industry. But both kids are in the insurance industry. Your brother's the CEO, you're the Chief Operating Officer. Yep. When you were looking at this, working with your brother, I have siblings, I'm not sure I could do it. How does that work in your relationship?
Sure. So I'll start by saying that I feel honored to be kind of, continuing that legacy that my grandfather and that my dad started. And so, Morris & Garritano, our purpose, like why we do what we do, is to create peace of mind. And I would say that we are doing that for our clients every day, for our clients and for our employees. And so I think it's just this wonderful byproduct that I live in this amazing community, and my brother is a great guy, and I love working with him. We're different. We bring really different perspectives to the business. And what I can say is that I know that my dad would be really proud right now. That we are working in the business together. We are growing it, and we are continuing that kind of legacy of community involvement. So yeah, I would say that I think he would be proud.
That's so interesting, and again, so wonderful to see. Again, having worked with both you and your brother, very different personality, but you guys do bring complementary pieces together. So looking at kind of your client base for Morris & Garritano, are you again, do you find that most of your clients are directed here from, are right here in SLO Central Coast, or do you find yourself kind of nationwide, statewide in your?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. So predominantly, most of our clients are in San Luis Obispo County and Santa Barbara County. Now, that being said, we have statewide programs. We specialize in a couple of areas like wine, for example. And our clients are growing. So we have business, not in every state, but we're predominantly concentrated in these counties. But I will say that we are growing, we're expanding down south. And as we grow, that brings back a lot of additional resources for our local clients.
And you said it there, was you're talking about expansion. So whereas I think the original insurance agency started here in SLO, you've expanded now, right? You've got offices in other places. Where can you talk about that?
So we have our main office in San Luis Obispo. We have an office in Santa Maria, and we just opened an office in Orange County.
Wow, Orange County. That starts to get to spreading out. But was that something that had always been in the plans, or did COVID make that, when everybody got the idea that working remotely was possible, did that facilitate it?
Sure. So I would say that COVID changed more of of where our employees live and work, but expansion has been in our plans for a while. It's really important for all the business owners that are out there. They know that growth is important to kind of reinvest and stay relevant for their clients, and so really our growth is just a byproduct of needing to expand our client base.
Well, and so this is an interesting point as you talk about expansion and growth. I mean, one of the key pieces we're seeing here in SLO in the Central Coast is retention and recruitment.
Yep.
So expansion sort of says, well, you're going to find more people. How has Morrison Garritano been facing that issue? Have you seen that issue? And how are you managing through it?
Yeah, so I would say right now, one of the things that we're focusing on is retention. So, losing turnover of employees is expensive, and it also creates instability for our clients. Keeping longevity of relationships just makes for a better client experience. So I would say that our team is really focused on retention. And certainly we've been able to start to attract some employees and some talent outside of our area, but that sword cuts both ways. And so we are absolutely seeing some of our employees, get recruited or poached, and it's often from larger areas, and they might be able to offer higher wages. So I would say we're really focused on retention, and we're doing a lot in order to keep our employees, but certainly that's a challenge. Recruiting employees as well as keeping them is a challenge that we're facing, just like so many other businesses in our community.
Yeah, really big issue. And yeah, I guess your point's right, is if you have some great assets, don't lose those assets.
Don't lose them. So yeah.
Yeah, and making that obviously kind of a key point. You recently spoke at our Good Morning SLO program, and you were talking about Morrison Garritano's family-friendly policies to try and retain employees. So maybe you could give us a quick rundown of that conversation, those who didn't hear it, about when you first kind of recognized it as a mother, dealing with some of those policies.
Sure. I mean, I was a little self-deprecating at the talk where I, shared, how hard it was when I first came back to work with my young daughter, and sort of being irritated at whoever was in the company that was setting these really early morning meetings, and it was obviously me. So I share that because it was so hard when I came back to work, and it was kind of from that moment on when I was thinking about, if I'm a partner in this firm and I'm struggling to stay engaged, stay here, give my best work, how must it be for many of other employees? And so we just started a journey. It certainly wasn't just me. I want to be, really clear on that. We have a lot of individuals in our company who have advocated for our employees over the last couple of years, but we started a journey, I would say, of flexibility. And the three areas that I think that we are fairly flexible on are, where you work, how much you work, and when you work. So those are kind of the three areas that we have really worked hard, both to support our working parents, as well as just people that have a whole host of reasons why they might need that flexibility or enjoy that flexibility.
Right, and so that's really interesting, and I think one of the questions that we would normally get, and as businesses consider these opportunities and options, is do you get feedback from your employees as you're trying to retain them that these are some of the key issues of why they stay or why they continue to be a part of Morrison Garritano?
Absolutely. So what I would say, we pay close attention, obviously, to our retention numbers. But one of the things we do is we pay close attention to our engagement survey results. So how engaged our team is, because what research will tell you is that engaged employees can be anywhere from 15 to 25% more productive. Okay, so that's kind of on the business end of why these policies are important for your business. But kind of along that line, an engaged employee is not looking for another job. And so I can tell you absolutely our approach to where you work, when you work, are keeping our employees satisfied, happy, and staying with the organization. It's one of the reasons.
Sure, and it's I want to jump into something you said right there. You said survey results.
Yep.
So you actually survey your employees. How do you do that?
So gosh, I don't know, maybe it was about a year ago now. We partnered with a firm called Culture Amp. It's a software tool, which allowed us during COVID, surveying our employees became even more critical, as I think many business owners did, just on a whole host of COVID issues. But so we use a survey, a software tool, to regularly get our employees' opinions and just gauge both engagement as well as other things. But yes, we focus on engagement by asking our employees.
That's incredibly brave.
Oh my gosh, initially, what I will say is years ago when we began to survey our employees, because we've done it for a number of years, but we've just gotten more intentional and more often in the last, I would say, several months, years. But when we first started asking our employees, I was really nervous. But what I'll tell you, Jim, is that just because if you don't ask, they're still thinking it and they're still talking about it. But if you ask and get that information, you can actually act on it. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the data.
Yeah, great point.
Don't be afraid.
And I think that's a great note, that even if you don't get the feedback, the thought's still there.
They're still thinking it. They're still talking about it. It could still mean you could have simple things that you could do that could rectify a situation.
Yeah, and you will potentially save some valuable employees on your team and long-term, investment in your company.
Absolutely.
Because you ask the right questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and so talk a little bit about maybe you talked about the when you work. Businesses are very much, and I'm sure the insurance is no different, where you got to be there for certain hours, or how do you find working through some of those questions?
So I would say we have core business hours. I'll just start there. So the when you work just gives people flexibility over their schedules within a couple of hours. So bottom line, our clients still come first and we have to meet business needs. And so I also know, as we're talking today, that my business is not the same as every business. So we've got hospitality partners and restaurant and wineries, and so they might not have as much flexibility over this, but in general, we can still meet our clients' needs within a couple of hours. So we have staggered coverage. So when I mean kind of when you work, we just have people that start their days early and their days late, and we just, we have a lot of conversations on how we're gonna meet client needs as well as put our teams together so that they can have some flexibility.
And looking at one of the key issues that I know a lot of businesses are facing, interested in your take on this, is the question around where people work. There's a big discussion around, having those conversations with employees' interaction versus being remote in their houses. How are you seeing that, and how are you tackling that issue?
So what I would say is, I'll answer it, but what I'll also start with is anybody that is considering some of these things, it takes a lot of conversations, it takes a lot of thoughtfulness, and so it's not just an easy thing to implement. There are certain things that are easy, Don't get me wrong. But I would say, in terms of how are we still engaging with each other, you know, we've been very intentional about doing a lot of face-to-face video, do a lot of check-in with our employees. We know very quickly if something's, not going well. I often say that someone can not be doing a good job sitting in the office as much as they can be doing sitting at home. And so I would say we've gotten more intentional as a company about creating, times to collaborate, team meetings, check-ins. We're bringing our entire company that is now spread out to San Luis Obispo in a couple of weeks. So we're just being really intentional about how and when we connect with each other.
Well, and congrats. You're a diamond level SLO County family friendly workplace.
Thank you.
The highest of the recognition points. And I know a lot of businesses listening can learn a lot from your experience. We have an assessment that has lots of different questions on our website for people to consider options. But you just talked about, one of those things is not having lots of conversations, tuning the dials to make it fit. Maybe talk a little bit about how you ramped up from the early morning meeting to where you are today, where you are doing lots of things with savings accounts and stuff like that. How did that process go for you?
Sure. Well, I would say there's no denying that COVID sped it up. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of perspective though. 10 to 12 years ago, we probably had one employee that lived outside of our county. Okay, today, a third of our employee base is not local. And I can digress on it. I know we'll probably talk about it. One of the reasons for that is kind of the affordability. We have a lot of people that move out of the area, but what I will say is that I think we were kind of talking about the assessment and how the conversation started and where we started. So we started slowly. We had some employees that wanted to move out of the area, so we started by getting them equipment. But I think where I started is that COVID sped that up for us. So a couple of years ago, we were just starting with working moms. Could they come in a little bit late? Could they come back from their maternity leaves working 30 hours? So it was just an evolution. And then when COVID hit, we just deployed quickly. We already had a certain amount of our employee base that worked out of the area. And we realized it was after a year of us working remotely, and we were growing, we were retaining our clients, we were getting feedback that, by all accounts, by all of our KPIs, all of our metrics, that we were meeting and exceeding our client expectations. And so at that point, we realized, since we're here, we've got to make this good. So, investing in more technology and just going all in. So I would say it started with, a little bit of flexible hours, people moving out of the area, trying to retain them. And now it's gone into, we're going all in on kind of where you work. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but it was just an evolution.
Well, and I guess one of the key pieces is when you look at our assessment, we brought in someone from who works with family-friendly policies and put together the wealth of options. When you started doing this, there probably wasn't a huge list out there of what else could we do. So was it just, hey, this is what our employees are telling us, or were you looking around to other businesses who had done things, or all?
Great question. Yeah. Both. So if I go back to some of the things that make us a family-friendly company, by the standards, these little things. We have a really good mother's room. Well, I was one of those early moms, and I remember having to, pump in my office and asking them to get shades for me. So just I sort of the little inconveniences based on personal experiences of our team members, including myself, realized let's put in a really good mother's room. Or we've had an FSA program for years, and that's a really simple one for employers. Not some of these big scary where do you work, but just an FSA account that allows people to contribute dollars pre-tax. So that's just a mechanism to do that. But yeah, we got feedback from our employees. And then we would also look at some other businesses in this community that were just doing some really good things. So I'd say it was a combination. What are the barriers to coming back to work? What are the things that we can do to make it easier? So it's a conversation.
Well, and you talked right there, you said FSA, which flexible spending accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are probably familiar with HSAs, health savings accounts. In the FSAs that you have, are you allowed to use that money to spend on expenses for childcare?
It's dependent care, correct. Now, you're not going to ask me a lot of insurance
No,
and questions, are you today?
not at all.
So an FSA allows you, it's dependent care, so it's child-related costs. So it's different than an HSA.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was most interesting. In fact, it's one of in looking at Morrison Garritano's policies from the chamber side, we were most impressed by that one, which actually I hadn't seen a lot of. And it was a great way, if you know you're going to be spending money on your children, childcare.
It's broad.
Right.
They allow a fair amount of things that fall under what they would consider an FSA cost.
There's an interesting, and again, I'm not going to expect you to know the answer to this, but whether FSAs would work on, you said dependent care, your senior citizen, like your parents, as some care for them in terms of daycare.
I can't believe I don't know the answer to this question right now.
No, but I my theory is that would be some of the leniency in it that you would be able to use it for. But it's another thing, whereas folks do normally think of family friendly as with children, some of this could be for seniors.
Honestly, I'm really proud that we are being promoted as a family-friendly organization, because that's very near and dear to my heart. Kind of with my own struggle with how many kind of working parents we have, but our policies really impact, I would say, all of our employees, from people that are taking care of aging parents. It runs the gamut of some of these both practices and policies that we have. So you're correct, Jim. They're not just for a family, for people. It's a very broad, I'd say, definition of family.
It's so great. And you started talking about it before, and so we'll jump in real quick. You've been doing a lot of policy work with our chamber, we're so thankful for, around housing. And so one of the things we were most interested in knowing is why was that important to you and Morrison Garritano to be involved in the kind of this housing policy discussion?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, 10 to 12 years ago, we had one employee living outside of San Luis Obispo County. And today we've got 48 employees. And I would say the number one reason that we hear why our people leave this community is cost of living. And at the top of that list is housing. And so it's very important that we continue to focus on this issue because it definitely impacts our ability to retain not only our employees, and we've been lucky to retain them, but having them part of our community and a part of our business community, living and working here is also vital. So that's why we've come out and are very engaged on this issue.
Yeah, it talks a lot about every business that is around is dealing with this same issue, similar to the family-friendly issues, in trying to expand, do their work, be more productive. In order to get new employees, maybe from out of the area, our unemployment rate is now down to 2.1%, the lowest it's ever been. We're gonna have to recruit people to the community.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I talk a lot about our flexibility on where you work. There are still parts of our business and parts of what we do that really require you to be here. And absolutely, when we have to recruit somebody here, that is an infinitely harder thing for us to do, especially when you're looking at kind of trailing spouses, and so that whole complexity of issues. So yes, it is challenging to recruit people here with the cost of housing. People get here and it's, and San Luis Obispo is also just infinitely harder. So we obviously, a lot of our employees have expanded to our surrounding communities.
Yeah, and I think one of the things as someone who came out of Southern California and the LA area is you do not want to create a part where the work, in order to work, you have to drive in through traffic and
Absolutely.
burn your day. And that's where remote work is great. But for folks that have to be a part or in the office, to not live close or be, easily accessible to their office place, housing is going to be that huge piece of it. And so I think it's so interesting. Most folks would not think the insurance agency would be involved in housing policy, but I think it's a true testament to your support to the community of that you're working on these issues, and that's important to you guys.
Yeah, I think that we're interested in issues that impact our employees and our clients. So we do insurance, but in reality, we do as well as our business community does and our employees. So we're engaged in issues that impact our community.
Well, this has been such an incredible conversation. We're so thankful for Morris Garritano's investment in the community, in the chamber, in overall for its employees and being a model. So, Kerry, thank you so much for sharing your experience and spending so much time with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
So to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this important conversation. On behalf of Kerry Morris, Chief Operating Officer for Morris & Garritano Insurance Agency, KCBX, and the SLO Chamber of Commerce, we hope you have an amazing week. Stay healthy and safe. I'm Jim Dantona, and this is The Working Lunch.